Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. The playoffs well underway at the Esports World Cup. Sentinels versus PaperX happened again in the bracket play. Not the matchup that Sentinels would have wanted, given PaperX just won the most recent tournament, and especially with Zelsis, given the reason that he did as to why they were not on top form today. But Sentinels out of the tournament already. So much other reaction as well to the result of the last couple of days, and will continue over the next few hours. Very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Big thanks to PrizePicks as well, supporting the content over this Esports World Cup period. If you guys want to get involved in daily fantasy, have a look at the link in the description box below. Download the app, use code Breaking Points, claim $50 on your first $5 pick. Play responsibly as ever if you choose to do so. Let's get into the action, because lots has happened over the last couple of days, such as this. Gen.G, I will say, they continue to kind of cook in scrims. They've made a couple of adjustments. Cloud, we know, is locked down there to a very long-term deal, and he's probably hoping that they can turn things around. Liquid, after a bit of drama back in Toronto, they qualified. They're not out there, though. Of course, they did not qualify for the World Cup, and therefore they're back home scrimming while the other teams are out there at the World Cup trying to have a good time. These are some great images, I thought. You know, here's Texture with Zekin, with so many other characters at the tournament as well, and Texture's in action right about now, playing this man, actually, right? So we do have this Texture, Gen.G, and Som NRG matchup currently ongoing. We'll see how that's trending here in a few minutes time. But to see how things fully transpired yesterday, these were the 8 teams eliminated from the first round, so in the group stages. So G2 were gone, as we know. Look, maybe if they'd had their full roster, they would have made it. They didn't. Billy went down in the end. They fought very valiantly indeed, but they went down to KC. We'll see how that transpired in a second. DRX, then, they dropped out to Sentinels. They got smoked 2-0. XLG got knocked out by Sentinels as well. RRQ, TC, and then the group of death down there in Group D. Edward Gaming, despite knocking out Thieves, didn't make it. And I think that will be especially, you know, frustrating for Thieves, in that Edward Gaming, yes, it was an incredibly impossible group with Fnatic and Gen.G in there, but still, 100T, they lose to Edward, and it's not like Edward really gave much of a fight against Gen.G, certainly the first time they played them. And the second time, to be fair, was the same story. So I think for 100T, yeah, they'll be frustrated to go out, but it's not like they can say, oh, well, you know, Edward are the world champions, and they were the best team here. Like, they weren't, and by a very long way. So I think that's a big concern for them. Again, the 8 teams that made it through: PaperX, Carmine Corp from Group A, BBL and Sentinels, NRG and Heretics, they did advance in the end, and then Fnatic and Gen.G. This was that result, by the way, from the group stage. Gen.G demolishing Edward Gaming 2-0, wasn't even close. Lotus was 13-8. The Haven was 13-4, I think. Yeah, so the Haven, Gen.G just dominated the defensive side. Texture goes 21-7. And the new man has 3 frags, right? So it's not a great map out of them. Well, as I say, have a look at the playoffs in a second, but just to look at the group stages, Carmine Corp took down Billy in the end 2-1, so they made it through. Sagetsu actually had a monster play here. I think I have it lined up for you guys. Yeah, here we go. This was like the decisive moment, really, of the game. Sagetsu gets the plant down, but, you know, this was looking like it was going to be 9-8. He gets the first couple of kills, and we're just challing one by one, lads, right? Like, you can't allow this to happen. You just can't allow it to happen. But, you know, an absolutely mega clutch, reminiscent to some stuff we've seen before in the past. But, yeah, when Hoosie goes down, it's just like, it's a beautiful clutch, but you're never going to 1v4 without some major mistakes from the other team. And, yeah, I think the first chal from Hoosie, okay, this happens, fair enough, didn't hit any bullets on him, but after that it was kind of all downhill from there. Yeah, Levius going down, and then even at this point, it's like, you can't afford to chal it like this. They go one at a time, they nearly kill him, but not quite. So Sagetsu gets a 1v4. That was pretty much the end of Billy's run of the tournament. Obviously, after losing that, Sagetsu finishes off on the sunset. They win it 13-9 in the end. That's them advancing through. We saw Sen take down DRX. We saw Heretics at least playing RRQ and taking them down with a nice little 2-0. So those advance to the next round as well. It was a 13-3 sunset and a 15-13 on the Icebox. We've seen lots of Icebox been played lately. And then Edward Gaming got taken down by Gen.G, that we just saw with a 13-8, 13-4. So that's how things transpired yesterday. Then, of course, 8 teams remaining into the playoffs. The group stages were drawn into the playoff stage, and we got to see what matchups we were going to have happen. Now, this is only a single elimination tournament, right? So that is one of the reasons why people don't consider this tournament in such high regard compared to some of the other championships out there. is because, you know, it's only single elim. Most tournaments, at least the internationals, tend to be double elimination. Some single elim tournaments you might say, oh, it should be best of 5, but I don't think it takes away too much from the tournament, really. It would be nice, I think, if it was a double elimination bracket from this point, but I understand why it's not, and that's the case of the EWC pretty much all the way across the board. It does make it very unforgiving though, right? If you play a difficult team round 1, you have no chances to come back in the losers bracket of the tournament because it does not exist. And Sentinels had the hardest first round game because they played the champions of Toronto in Paper X. There were other difficult games, and because Sentinels lost to BBL, that was maybe the dagger for them, right? And at the end of the day, yeah, there's loads of money on the line this tournament, but the formats probably could be better in the sense that the very first round was a best of 1 map. And maybe Sen will have felt like they would have beaten BBL had they played them over a 3-map series, but they didn't. It was a best of 1 because they lost that. Even though they won the 2 matches from there, they still ended up as the 2nd seed, which put them against a 1st seed, and that in this case happened to be Paper X. So Sen say, look, it's time for us to make these guys go extinct. And FNS says, well, look, we're going to get Paper X versus Sen, we're going to get Paper X versus Fnatic, and then we're going to get Paper X versus NRG. We'll see about that over the coming minutes for sure. But yeah, this was a very, very dominant series indeed. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Obviously, Paper X right now are playing some phenomenal stuff. They finally got over the line in Toronto after, you know, really years of trying, as it were, and they win the championship. Something was making plays, and yeah, the Sentinels, they played the Icebox again. I think it was an interesting decision just because Icebox, again, it was like, it wasn't their map pick, right? But they allowed it into the pool. They were respectable, I guess, on it the other day against BBL, but it wasn't really a good showing. So I think there was definitely an argument that Sentinels might need to stay away from this map. The funny thing is that it's not like Paper X were particularly well prepared, and then they still, you know, demolished them on it, right? So Narrate tried his best, but it wasn't enough, and then we went to the Sunset, a map that we know that historically Sentinels go rather well on, and Zekken was making some nice plays to at least keep things kind of competitive. But the funny thing you'll notice about these clips is that in all of these clips, Sentinels are down rounds, right? So they're down 2-0 here, and then they made it, you know, it was at least a competitive map. Zeltis, John QT, Narrate all made the plays to get it to 9-9. The crowd was given some serious energy in there as well. It kind of felt like, okay, the comeback could be on here on the Sunset. Maybe there's a Game 3 alert here in this series. We know that Sen liked this map, but in the end it wasn't to be. This was Rob Moore experiencing the moment as things all kind of fell apart. And Sentinels then recognised that, okay, you know, it was a nice try, but in the end it wasn't to be, and Paper X took them down. So yeah, Sen go down to the tournament. We'll just have a look at that series as it transpired, because the first map Icebox was a demolition job, 13-3. John QT had 4 kills, Zekken had 4 kills, Zeltis had 7, and then the Sunset, they gave it a good go on the second side. Zekken went 26-17 on the Neon, but apart from that, it wasn't really a pretty showing, and they went down 13-9. At the end of the day, Paper X, we know what they've achieved in recent weeks. It was always going to be difficult to beat them. I mean, they went on that remarkable run, the train that they've been on lately. They've not lost anything since quite a while ago, right? If we look at their results, the last time they lost was in the Swiss stage to Gen.G back at Masters Toronto, and after that, they've won everything they've played in a row. So that maybe wasn't a massive surprise today. Jin gets the opportunity to break the shard or whatever this thing is that the teams have. They've actually now enclosed it in a bit of perspex, right? Because I was looking at this thinking that, okay, I'm sure what they've made it out of the material, it's probably fine, but like, you could get a little bit breaking off and causing some damage. You never know. You don't want to take the risk, in my opinion, anyway. It is what it is. It's kind of a cool thing. And Jing destroys the Sentinels, and that's GG. They're out of the tournament. Now, Zelsis kind of explains what it was like from his perspective, and I think it's interesting to hear these things emerging because Leaf wasn't at this tournament, and they had to play with their assistant coach because he went through, you know, he's going through some health issues, and his doctor said better not to travel. Unfortunately for Zelsis, he made it, but once he got there, then he ran into issues. And he says that he got severe flu and food poisoning yesterday. No excuses, but if you're curious to why I was constantly holding my head or stomach, that is why. As he says, showed good strides, success like this. I think that's probably kind of true, right? I mean, Zelsis being unwell and the team playing Paper X now, it was, you know, they didn't really get too much of a warm-up into the bracket play, part of the tournament anyway. the way they beat DRX is very impressive. So I think there's definitely some positives to take away here for Sentinels, but again, not the result they would have wanted. They would have wanted to play PaperX a bit closer, especially when Forsaken says they didn't even practice on Icebox. They just practiced it once. And yeah, they were on vacation. The teams were on vacation. It makes sense. But still, they barely put in any time on that map. They came out, they dominated Sentinels on it 13-3. There will be talk about it going into the second stage, and as Gen.G says, wish we could have gone further. That's it for us here. Little break, because the break is very short actually. It's only a few days away. That stage 2 gets underway, and then stage 2 gets underway. Sentinels will play there, and we'll see how it transpires from that point onwards. Now, Fnatic are still underway, unless this is now concluded. It has. Karmine Corps have just gone down. So yeah, Fnatic, they won the game 14-12 actually. It was an overtime on the Sunset they needed to win, with a big comeback in the second side when they were, I mean, what were they down here, like 11-6. They brought a comeback, they took it to overtime, they won the overtime, and then on their map pick on the Ascent, they've just got the job done. So 13-7, Karmine Corps, honestly, a decent tournament from them, but again, they played Fnatic. They were the grand finalists at Toronto. Chronicle goes 29-10. Alpha's on the Chamber. You know, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. So those two teams already eliminated, and just as I'm recording this video, we have the other two matches are about to get underway. This is a big one, of course, is NRG versus Gen.G. Currently 8-5 at the half, or 7-5 it was at the half, before Gen.G have now won the pistol rounds. That's their map pick on the Sunset. Yeah, Gen.G are going to be the favourites to get over the line here, but who knows? That's going to be interesting. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.